Hey, you guys! Anyone want to do a dungeon with me? That's right, I'm back, babies. Back again after a little hiatus. I was a little disappointed in the viewership of my show. Not you personally, but just the amount of viewers. Oh, and we have lovely Carla here too, if you can hear in the background. She's doing more of a chunk, but that's alright. We love her anyway, don't we, guys? In fact, let's all give Carla a big. We're number one! We're number one! She's shown us we're number one! How is everybody this evening? I hope it's lovely for you as it is for us. So what do we got for you during today's show? Well, I'm not recording new video right now. I am going to use chunks of old video because I have a lot of it to use. But I want to discuss the Xbox. What about it, you may ask? Yes, Travis, what about the Xbox? Well, it is a darling, perfect little machine. No, seriously though. I've recently come across a few reviews explaining the difference between the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. And one thing I noticed that the reviews tend to gloss over, skip a little bit, that I think is information you would need if you were making a decision between the two, is that the main two differences between the Series S and the Series X comes down to two things: resolution and storage space. Now, firstly, I'm going to address the storage space. The S has half the storage space at 512 gigabytes than the X at 1 terabyte. Now, in reality, when you take your S home and you plug it in and it updates and does its stuff, you end up with around 380 gigs of storage. And most games take 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 and something gigs. So, on the outset, you're not able to download or use many games on this all-digital device. The X has a disk drive and it has double the space. But here's what they don't cover in these reviews. They don't talk about. You can hook an external. So Microsoft sells uh, a card. It's not an actual hard drive like you would think of it. It's a little slot card that slides in. That's, I believe, a terabyte, or maybe it's 512 gigabytes. But it's expensive. It's $200. Nobody wants this thing. So what are your other options? You just have to buy the X to get better storage? No, not exactly. And I'll tell you why. Because the S, as well as the X, because you can use information if you have an X, has USB ports. It has three on the S to be specific, and they are USB 3.1 USB high speed. Super speed, sorry, misspoke. And you can hook an external drive up with this thing. Now, if you hook up an external platter drive because you're old or you're digging through drawers and just pulling out any old drive you find, you can still use it, but it will only work for storage. To be honest, I do not use a platter driver on my Series S. I use a actual external SSD. Uh, and it's not a big deal to switch games from the internal to the external. Between 5 or 10 minutes, literally, I start the transfer, I fire up Call of Duty, I play around in multiplayer, check my transfer status. It's typically done after one game. Bam, I'm launching my new game, I'm happy. Now, the one thing I want to note is that almost every SX optimized game says requires internal storage, requires NVMe SD. But I have found that actually a lot of games, and I'm not going to make an extensive list because I'm either going to miss some because I don't play every game, or something works off my SSD because my SSD is really good, but it doesn't work off yours. But the point is a lot of games, even when they say that they require the NVMe SSD, will work off an external SSD. Uh, Again, not doing an exhaustive list, but Cyberpunk claims that. No, I can run Cyberpunk off my SSD. Uh, and a lot of games that at one point when I originally got them said requires NVMe SSD have eventually through updates come to work off my external. So storage
I've
should
read
not
some of
really be
Ikora's
the
notes
deciding
on the
factor when you're
darkness and the
purchasing an
light
X or an
guardian.
S.
She thinks the darkness is
Now, the
closely
other
linked
thing
with
the X has,
memory.
the S lacks, is a
You
disk drive.
access this place with the
Me
darkness
personally,
power.
I don't own any
What
Blu-rays.
exactly have we tapped into here?
I stream everything. Like in this day and age, who has disc that doesn't have a player already? So let's hit the real sore spot. and what I don't think people quite understand, and that is 4K. So the S plays games, and I'm saying that phrase for a reason, at a max of 1440p. 1440p is kind of the spot between 2K and 4K. And to put this in a little more perspective, the average person's eyes see life in 5K, which means 4K is almost real life resolution, and 1440 is really close to that. But here's the thing. Most 4K televisions come with what they call an upscaler or intelligent upscaler or preprocessor or whatever term that manufacturer wants to use. So, I have never seen an honest review, apple to apple, the X and the S on an upscaler and or on a 1080 or 1440 TV to say, hey, this is apples to apples. Also, I'd like to note that unless you have a 4K TV, this 4K source is not doing you any favors. It's not like, oh, I'm going to make the image look better because I'm supposed to be 4K. No. The Xbox, the source, detects what output resolution your TV or monitor is, and it puts out data in that resolution. Your picture is rendered in that resolution. So if you don't have the right monitor, you don't have the right TV, that 4K upgrade's doing absolutely nothing for you. The next thing I like to hit on is, and I'm actually going to hit on this real briefly and come back to it. It's that the X has 2 gigs more of RAM, and the RAM that's used in the X has a higher frequency. Now, absolutely, absolutely, when you go into the world of PCs, there's a huge speed difference noticeable in every way, and I'm getting the Quentin Tarantino dance over here. I wish you guys could see it because you would laugh as much as I want to. There's a huge difference between DDR, they don't call it DDR1, between DDR and DDR4. Noticeable difference, but when you come to, say, DDR4 at 2677 and DDR4 at 3200, unless you're maxing the system out, unless you're doing something just over heavy, you're not going to see that difference. And 2 more gigs in a console, when you consider that they're sharing memory between video and CPU, maybe that 2 gigabytes is just for the 4K textures. I honestly don't think you can see a real performance other than the 4K capability between the X and the S. And like I said, you've got to have the TV that can do it, and you've got to have a special HDMI cable, HDMI 2.1, which they do actually give you when you buy the X. Now, I'm a cheap person. I probably don't have one 2.1 cable laying in this house, but I have a bunch of HDMI cables. If you would like to guest star, I'll introduce you. I offered, folks. I offered. So I just find these reviews a little lax in the fact that they don't present that there are other options on top of the officially offered storage. That they don't talk about 4K and the need for a 4K television, and then how that 4K television, if it was any type of modern and, I don't want to say good, but expensive set, probably comes with a nice upscaler that's going to take care of that 1440 to 4K transition for you. But I have heard someone speak about the RAM, and I'd like to say that in my mind, that a higher frequency RAM, depending on how big the gap is not going to make a huge difference. Latency timing on that RAM, not going to make a real difference. Unless you want to go generations and generations and generations apart. Now I'm going to come back to this 4K thing, but I want to talk something else. I want to talk about Intel and AMD for a second. And the subject that I want to talk about that kind of relates to what we're talking about now is called XMP, Extended Memory Profiling. So back in the day, back in the 90s, back in the 80s, back when I was, a kid, not only did you have to have matched sticks of RAM, but you had to have matched case timing, match latency. People even were so scared that it would mess up their system that they would only take it from matched manufacturers. If they had one stick of Crucial and they wanted another one, they had to get a Crucial stick. As time went on, modern PCs kind of developed a little bit, and I'm hoping manufacturers realized that people like me were building them in their home, and we would just take our parts from an old one and put it in a new one. So the motherboards became a bit more forgiving, and they would do a negotiation, a query during the boot. And of course, it does this automatically. It says, hey, the BIOS is on. And the BIOS wants to know what kind of disk drive you are. The BIOS wants to know what kind of video card you are. And so when it sees the RAM, and the RAM says, I'm this, the RAM also says, and I run at this frequency, and I run at this latency. And if it gets two different frequencies and two different latencies or whatever, it picks the slowest one and says, you're both going to communicate at this frequency with this latency. And that allows you to use different RAM in the same device. Now, Intel came out with this thing called, please, this will make this so much more interesting. Woodpeckers are pecking your brains out? Oh my God, stop it, Woody. Ah, 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 ah. She says, now you all think I smoke crack. This is what I put up with when I try to make these videos for you all. You got anything else to say? How's your son doing? Christopher. Is he going to be visiting? He is delightful. Is he going to be visiting us tonight? He's locked in the basement. Last time he did that. You do that. Oh, now you're denying your child? Folks, we are taking this mic in the basement later, and we're going to meet Christopher. I heard he was quite upset at Aunt Pamela. Apparently, she had to go to her church, which she believes is her heroin recovery group. And so you had to babysit while she was gone? That's just what I heard. So back to Intel. Intel invents a thing called XMP, Extended Memory Profiling. And this is just a little bit of code in the BIOS. And what that does is, if you ever open up your desktop, not every system, manufacturers do things differently, but the majority of them will have multiple RAM slots. And usually, these RAM slots will be varying in color, usually two different colors. And in DDRs, you can run RAM in banks, in groups. With extended memory profiling, you can have different RAM, and as long as the same RAM speed and type is in the same colored slots, then not only can you have different RAM, but those banks, those different slots, will each run at their different speeds. And the XMP coding will allow this to happen with minimal freezes, glitches, and crashes. Now, AMD didn't have XMP when Ryzen first came out. I believe it was the third generation when they started implementing their own version of XMP, but they've never quite gotten it right. In fact, I don't play with, see a lot of AMD products, but I will say that before XMP, if you tried to mix match RAM in an AMD system, it wasn't going to work. I'm hearing now with their XMP execution that it works a little better. There's still freezes and glitches. It's like this memory stick has to catch up or whatever. But the main thing that bothers me on AMD on this whole issue is that when AMD makes a processor and they release it, they actually release a recommended RAM spec. Not that they just want DDR4 or DDR3, but they want it at this speed. And even if you buy two matchsticks of another speed and throw them in there like, oh, they're matched, they're going to work right. Then AMD will tell you to turn on the XMP feature, and when you do, it will work. But from what I'm seeing and reading, using non-recommended RAM with an AMD processor yields very subpar results, a lot of freezing, a lot of glitching. And I believe this is in a direct correlation to how both Intel and AMD processors deal with RAM. So, we'll start with Intel side of it. When you launch your program, your video editor, your spreadsheet, what have you, Spreading the sheets. Dump, dump, dump. Spreading the sheets. The program opens. The data is read off your hard disk. It's taken to the RAM. The processor, goes, hey, I'm going to deal with this. Put this in RAM. I need to refer to it. As you type things in, it's being held in RAM. So you go to close your program. And, it says, oh, this work he did needs to be saved. Put it to the hard disk. But it doesn't grab everything out of RAM. Little pieces of data stay there. And plus, a lot of programs have updaters or whatever, and they say, keep me on no matter what. I'm not closing. Keep me in the RAM just in case. So what happens over use? Oh, I'm getting the no more sign. My genitals have been threatened, so I'll return. So, I'm back. I got interrupted by the wicked stepmother. She was like, I'm cooler than you. I wear designer shades to hide my eyes. You better not think I'm cooler than you. Anyway, so over time, you're opening up programs, you're closing programs, you're opening tabs, whatever. The RAM gets a little clogged. And I do know, working with Intel systems, even though it's not listed on your spec sheets, that when about 50% of your RAM is full, it does a page turn, what you call virtual memory. This is on Linux as well as Windows, so don't none of you penguin heads come commenting that Linux doesn't do that. It does. They call it a swap file. No. So, it dumps all the RAM contents to disk. It rereads it real quick and decides what it needs, what is currently actually open that needs to be in RAM. And that's kind of the way it manages memory leaks and keeps the RAM from being overfull. AMD, however, on the other hand, it does page files, it does swap files, but such as the RAM is 50% full, it tends to do it on a regular time schedule. And this dumping to a page file and rereading the page file usually is done pretty quickly. Usually you won't notice any slowdown. It's being done in the background, no problem. But it does sometimes cause a momentary glitch. Like you're doing something, you click on a button and it doesn't respond, and you click it and it does. That's probably because your page file was being read at that point, and the computer's like, hold 1 millisecond while I process this data. Now coming to consoles. Excuse me, the wicked stepmother. No, I don't want your Apple wicked stepmother. I'm sorry. Okay, I've chased off the wicked stepmother. I'm safe. I'm safe from the poison apples. So, consoles, on the other hand, both the Xboxes particularly, run off AMD chips. Now, I've never noticed a freeze or a glitch or a hiccup that would make me think it was page filing. In fact, I don't think they do, because they're both octa-core processors, 3.6 gigahertz if I remember correctly. And the S has like 10 gigs of RAM, and the X has 12 gigs RAM. That's more than enough to play any of these games that are available for their systems. PlayStation 5 runs on an AMD also, so it should be good. My point is when it comes to performance, when it comes to you having the best experience in modern electronics, it's almost all the same. Yes, you get what you pay for. You get better storage. You get a disk drive if you pay more. But this S is going to perform and play every game the X does. In fact, what I hate to read is when clickbaiters or just commenters.
I saw the end before it happened.
Gaming back. Microsoft made a mistake.
My own
Why?
dad,
Well, because
brought on by the separation from my power. And in these final
you have a
moments,
1080 TV. It's not even
I
a 1440.
looked to the
It's a
sky.
1080. It's 720. You're a teenager living in your parents' basement.
Hello, old friend.
Does that mean you can't hook up
I've
to Series S?
chased you for a long time.
The
First
data
as an
was there.
enemy,
The data was there.
then
And
as a collector,
the Xbox
and
One
finally,
produced that
now,
in a lower resolution.
a supplicant.
Crisp, detailed resolution. So the same game.
What is it the Guardians say?
Make this a better
Devotion
kind of-
inspires
Imagine I have my desktop right
bravery.
now, and I turn that
Bravery
computer up and I'm playing
inspires
this.
sacrifice.
flying around,
sacrifice
loving life.
and
And I say, you know
sacrifice.
what? This 470, RX 470, is working, but it's not doing the game justice. And I just break out my
Here we
1080,
are.
GTX 1080 Ti, and I throw that in there. I don't have to reinstall anything except for some drivers. Probably not because the motion's going to be a problem.
Wouldn't it be
I
clever
fire
of
up
you
Destiny again.
if after everything
Crisp urban image.
you simply let
More
me
detail.
die?
And I played for a while. And I said, you know what?
Oh, what a
This is
trick.
better. I got a 2080 lying there.
Elegant.
I open my desktop up, throw that 2080 in again because if I drive an architecture,
Is
probably
that
didn't have to
it?
take the driver. And I just fire up the same game. It plays again. And each of those cars use a different resolution or a different amount.
If there is an answer,
So you cannot tell
I
me
don't
that
hear
you
it.
still want to produce games that are low resolution.
because now the world
In a way, they sort of already do. The data is already
begins to
there.
fade.
Hardware is deciding how to utilize that data, what format you output it in. So it has nothing to do with the studios. Now, yes, hardware obsoletes itself. Nobody makes games for Atari anymore. Nobody makes games for the Super Nintendo anymore. That hardware is obsolete. But this is the thing we're comparing. Current next-gen technology that will not be obsolete for a few years, and people saying that it's being held back because you allowed a cheaper version to be made, and that's just not true. It is patently false. It's like having a Corvette and a Yugo. They will both go 60 miles an hour. It's kind of they can drive both everything.
Incredible that I could forget something like that, isn't it? Such a storied life, erased. The light offers us a fresh start. But if we don't know where we came from, how will we know where to go? I'm so grateful to you for reminding me, for telling my story.
Wait,
I have
what is she talking about?
right now. I just kind of
She remembers.
kind of
We helped her remember.
Thanks for the memories, Guardian.
We have to leave.
it's like different flavors of Linux. And I hate Linux heads, by the way. What's the best operating system? First off, you can do almost as much in Windows as you can in Linux. Windows even has WSL, or Windows even has WSL. You got me so mad I'm talking backwards. Windows Unix subsystem for Linux. Okay?
I knew Ikora had
Just
nothing
because
to
you know
do
how
with
to use
Savathun having the
command
light.
line to remove a file
But the truth
doesn't
is
make you an elite hacker.
so much worse. I don't understand how the Traveler could choose
Windows
her
gets
the
more
same way
viruses.
it chose you.
Yeah, because
We need to talk to
when a hacker
Zavala.
makes a virus, he either has a whole ecosystem to target.
I
with
know
Windows,
you're
or he
eavesdropping,
has a fringe
neon
population that targets
nerds.
Linux.
Nothing brings folks
Yes, I am
together
easy.
like
Thank
a
you for saying
common enemy. And
She's
you've
over
got
there
a
over that
lot
making
of
symbols
enemies.
and signals.
Watch your
Oh,
butts.
apparently now she smoked, cracked, and died. Wow. Speaking of crack, I almost forgot to thank our sponsors. But I want to see if I can be joined for this sponsorship plug. I just met you. I am crazy. Here's my number. Don't have my baby. It's hard to look right when you wear your jeans backwards. Oh, oh yeah, it's the sponsor portion. My bad. I'm not. Tonight's show has been brought to you by Do We Cheat 'Em and How? We're the only law firm that will sue for you for $39.95. That's right. Do we cheat 'em? And how? Our transportation coordinator for tonight is Drop Off Pickoff. Lovely Russian gentleman with a limousine. Well, he calls it a limousine. It's really a bicycle. But don't tell him. Don't tell him he paid us $5. And, of course, Americans for Trump. When you got to vote, vote with your T-rump. And finally, as always, our number one sponsor. In our hearts, our minds, she lives forever. The lovely, the beautiful,
Welcome
the
back.
non-spoken, not appearing, and please don't beat me,
Glad to
Carla.
forget about fighting them on the ground. Go for their supply lines.
Yes, please tell her don't beat me. So, that's about all I have for
You're
tonight's
back.
show. I would go to the basement and introduce you all to Christopher, but I think Christopher needs a little bit of... Christopher needs a little... Oh, now she's
Well,
denying it.
Titan, let's see what we have here.
Christopher needs a little prep work, a little softening of the edges.
You don't look too
I
banged
mean, he's
up.
really something. He's working on his career right now. He just got back from school. Want everybody to know.
Here you go.
Everybody knows Christopher. Good job. We love you, Chris. Great going to school. Now he's working towards a goal. He has a goal. He's going to join the circus. He's going to be a weight guesser. I don't know. He keeps guessing everybody at 600 pounds. But one day he'll get it right. I don't know. So, y'all have a good night. God bless you, and peace out. Let's do a dungeon.